I am going to get started just because we have a lot to cover today. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our office hours that are exclusively for the adult day centers. My name is Emily Barville. I am the project manager at Leading Age Virginia. As many of you know, Leading Age Virginia is an association of not-for-profit aging services organizations serving the adult day centers, senior housing, assisted living, nursing homes, and home and community-based services. If you missed any of the previous sessions, you can visit our website to view the previously recorded sessions. We will place the direct link for those recordings in the chat now, and this is our fourth office hours in this series. Click ahead. I am going to start with a few housekeeping notes before we move on to our content for today. If you would like to ask a question, please use the chat option at the bottom of your screen. You may raise your hand if you would like to verbally ask a question, and all links will be placed in the chat as needed. All office hour sessions will be recorded, and you will have access to those recordings after each session. Most office hour sessions will be set up in a similar format, consisting of a short presentation and an opportunity for Q&A at the end. Today, the Q&A will actually be during the presentation portion of the office hours. The office hours will be held the second Wednesday of every month, and the topic will vary. We will be inviting guest speakers to come and give educational presentations about a variety of infection prevention and control topics to ensure that each center can learn about current infection control practices that are applicable to your center. Moving on to the agenda for today, the main content for today's session will be a presentation by Susan Maslin from HQI. The poll sent out to adult days after the last office hour session identified participant care equipment, devices, and supplies as a topic needing additional resources and support. So that is our presentation topic for today. After the presentation, I will share some updates with you all and have you answer a couple quick poll questions for us. Sue Maslin has been a nurse for over 40 years, predominantly in acute care, but has done everything from bedside critical care nursing to nurse leadership to staff development. She's certified in both infection prevention and care management. Please help me by welcoming Sue Maslin to our meeting, and you can begin whenever you are ready, Sue.
Thanks, Emily. I appreciate that. Happy Valentine's Day to you all, and how terrific it is for me to be on this office hours call. It might seem to be a little bit of a stretch to link equipment and cleaning with something you love. Well, maybe after today's brief discussion, you and your staff might not exactly love it, but maybe hopefully dislike it a little less. I also want to thank you so much for the opportunity to do this, because I'm also helping to lead some affinity series, which is both assisted living and adult daycare centers. We had our first one yesterday, but the one for next month is about cleaning. So you kind of helped me get a little warmed up and to get some preview of what some of the content that I'd like to talk about next month. Next slide, please. Hopefully some of you on this call may know my face, but Betsy Albee has also been a part of the HQI team doing site visits. And Brandy Stevens is also a very important part of our team and has provided us with some great insights, as well as our colleagues with DSS assisting us with the visits and feedback. So when the three of us made our selections for site visits, it was in the whole pool of adult living and assisted living facilities. I made my choices randomly by location, but somehow by the luck of the draw, I seem to have selected more adult days than the assisted livings. And what a pleasure it's been to be welcomed to your facilities. I only have 2 left that I haven't been able to get in to do a site visit. But my hope springs eternal, and I recognize that it's a very delicate balance between, offering to show support and not seeming like a stalker. But I really appreciate the opportunity that I've had to visit the sites that I have, and my hope is always to be a support and a resource to provide you feedback that might make your job just a little bit easier. So when we look at our and we're on the objectives, right? Yep, there it is. Okay. So regarding today's discussion, the policy on equipment and supplies was one of 2 that were identified as opportunities for enhancements and clarity. And I hope that some of the additional information that I'm going to share today can assist you in the how, the why, and the what you clean. We're going to consider what items need to be cleaned, and again, who needs to be doing that. And of course, I really want to make sure that if you have any questions about the policy, that you still can get your questions answered as best I can. As we begin, I am going to have a few polling questions just to help me know a little bit more about who's on the call and to make sure I'm covering as much as what's important for your facility. So if you'll go to the next slide, we have our first polling question. Here's kind of my challenge is when there's so much variety in settings where adult services are being provided, how to meet everyone's needs. So speaking for myself, I have visited facilities that were contained to one room, to multi-room complexes. And then, of course, because of that, the amount of equipment and the surfaces to clean will vary greatly based on your facility type. So if you will please just select whether your facility is just in one single room or if it is in multiple rooms.
And I will share the results of it as soon as we have all the answers in.
Okay. Okay. Give everybody a few minutes. Well, it's a pretty simple question. So when you feel, Emily, that they have enough people have had time to answer this, okay. Okay, so the majority are in more than one room. Okay, thank you so much. Let's go on to the second polling question then. Again, it's a yes, no. And it has to do with meals. So do you prepare your own meals on site? Because again, some facilities that I've been to have the food prepared on site. Sometimes it's been by paid staff members. Sometimes it's actually by volunteer cooks. Is there a contract that you might have with an outside vendor or a cooperative agreement with a assisted living facility that you might be aligned with or an additional program? I've seen a little bit of everything. So if you please choose whether you prepare your meals on site. Okay. So the majority, again, do not. Now, if I've got no's here, does that mean that they didn't answer the question, Emily?
No, that means that they did and they answered no to it.
Okay, and they answered no. Okay, all righty. Okay, all right, let's do the third and the last one for me. It's again a yes, no. So this has to do with passing medications and checking blood glucose, blood sugars on your area in your site. Again, some facilities don't pass any medications. They may have coordinated with the primary care, the PCP and the families to have medications provided before the client arrives, or then when they go home, they have their medicine. It sometimes just has some creative questioning that needs to be asked. Some of the things that I've noticed are that there are some adult days that have a nurse that advocates for the client. Some adult days have direct nursing oversight, while some have consultant services or remote coverage by being aligned with, let's say, an assisted living facility. The reason that I'm asking this question is you may have noted in the 13 policies that you've received that if you are a facility that does not pass medications or check blood sugars, that you think, well, maybe I don't need that. My recommendation is what's really nice about that leading age binder that you got is you've got the tabs in there. Just move the 2 tabs of the policies that you're not using to the back. You've got that as a reference just in case you expand or you get a client that you're going to need to pull that out and take a look at. So it's I think a nice reference. And so what were the answers as far as passing meds that we had, Emily?
It was all yeses.
All of them are passing medications. Oh, that's interesting. So, or checking blood sugars. So for those that are participating, that might be something that you might want to consider. Is there a possibility that maybe you might not have to, because the family, if you coordinated with the providers, that you don't even have to worry about that. So that's very interesting, because my experience has been, well, maybe it's about half and half of the facilities that I've been to don't do any passing of medications. Thank you for that. All right, let's go to the next slide. This is one of my favorite slides. I like colors, but hopefully this is a concept that you all are very familiar with, the chain of infection. Okay, it's a classic example of the 6 elements that are part of how infections are spread. I personally like this particular version because it gives greater detail on what each link of the chain and how it's related, as well as measures to prevent moving on to the next link. Just like building a fire, if there's something missing, a spark is not going to catch. So when we look at, the reason we're here for this discussion today, why we want to disinfect surfaces, I put that you are here because we're really directly talking about the mode of transmission. That's the link that we want to break with application of this policy. Next slide, please. But I also am the kind of person that likes to believe that simpler is better. So this chain of infection is exactly the same information, besides a lot of words and a lot of colors, but it really talks about where those chains and links are. So to me, sometimes simpler is better to convey some information. The getting around link is exactly what is addressed in the mode of transmission, but it makes it a little bit easier to understand. Okay, so is this an infection that's hitching a ride on our hands or gloves as we're moving from one task to another? Is it laying in wait on a surface? Because without a bit of elbow grease or a chemical, a virus, a bacteria, or a fungal organism that lives for hours or even days is not going to go anywhere and will be waiting to hitch a ride. Next slide, please. So define clean. All right. Cleaning for your facility may or may not be the same kind of clean expectations for your home. All right. How are you going to define clean at your facility? The first 3 refer to things that you're going to see, right? The 4th uses a different, but still a very potent sense, which is smell. The problem is what we're going to be talking about is the things you can't see. As your policy states, the cleaning is what is going to happen when your elbow grease does what your elbow grease does to remove visible soil from a surface. So that would be the things that you might see, right? So you might use a detergent while you're doing this, or you might remove it with water. All right. But the important thing is that there's got to be a removal of something that could prevent a disinfecting agent from actually doing its work. Next slide, please. Sometimes there's a little confusion about sanitation and disinfecting, and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Generally, when we're talking about food surfaces, we're talking about that a surface might need to be sanitized and then oftentimes rinsed, okay? And you don't want, if you've got a chemical on a surface, you don't want that to transmit into somebody's body. That's why you need to clean that off. All right. So that's why we're going to be rinsing it. So you want to make sure you're wearing gloves, right? But you also want to make sure that that chemical, whatever's on there, is not going to stay. Let's go to the next slide, please. So really what we're going to focus on is disinfection, right? It's the process of removing some or all microorganisms that can cause disease, except bacterial spores. But then again, there's a little clarification for that, because depending on some disinfectants and their strength, then their concentration, they may be considered sporicidal. And typically we think of disinfection in how well we do as far as how many microorganisms are going to be removed. So we're going to look at high, intermediate, and low. And key to this is always we want to make sure how long the chemical is on the surface. And we're talking about inanimate surfaces and how long a period of time. Sometimes you might have heard people talk about contact time or kill time or wet time. It's very specific to whatever that chemical is you're putting on the surface. Typically and ideally, it's written on the container itself. A lot of times, I'm not going to lie, it's in really small letters, and you really have to kind of read until you get to the information that talks about disinfection. But it's going to tell you how long that surface needs to be visibly wet. So if you've got, let's say, a container of wipes, that's why you need to make sure that you close the top, because through evaporation, it's not going to be as wet as, and so it might take multiple towels that you pull out in order to actually really get the surface wet. So it's ideally written on the container. Now, what happens if you're in a facility and you're going to mix bleach? All right. Very important, and something that I have found kind of in common going from place to place is sometimes I might ask about, how they are mixing it and how they know it's at the right concentration. So, you can know that it's a third of a cup of bleach to a gallon of water. Well, most facilities, if they've got a spray bottle, that's not a gallon and you're not going to waste that. So you really need to know what that proper concentration is. It also needs to stay wet. And do you know how long it's supposed to stay wet? Even for bleach, it's 5 minutes. Now that's one of the shorter times, but that is if it's mixed, and it needs to be prepared fresh every day. It loses its potency. So it's important, if you are mixing bleach, that you know when it was mixed, how it was mixed, and when it was mixed. All right. And always you want to wear gloves and eye protection in case of splashes. That's again something that I have found, that some people have gotten so used to mixing the bleach that they are, yes, wearing gloves, hopefully wearing gloves, but they're not wearing eye protection. And that's important for you to be protected against an accidental splash. Here's a question for the group. Do you know why it's not recommended that you use bleach when you're cleaning up a urine spill? And I'm talking about, not just a little bit, I'm talking about a puddle, right? That's because urine, for some people, has ammonia as a byproduct. You don't ever mix chemicals, right? You never would mix bleach and ammonia, because it has off gases that can be very harmful. So that's again why it's so important to always clean a surface before you disinfect it. So you want to get the urine up first before you're going to disinfect that surface. Does that make sense? Okay, what slide are we on? Okay. One big difference again between sanitizers and disinfectants is that sanitizers are not going to kill as many pathogens as a disinfectant. So that again, you want to make sure that if you are, wanting to fully get your area clean, you want to use a disinfectant that's going to kill viruses and bacteria that are going to remain on surfaces after you clean them. Next slide, please. Now, here's one that I think is an easy one for people to miss. And it talks about minimizing contamination when you're doing cleaning and disinfecting. Okay. And I pulled this straight off of the CDC, because it's important to remember in your centers that you want to minimize contamination of your cleaning solutions. Okay. So, housekeeping surfaces like floors and tabletops need to be cleaned and disinfected regularly, when spills occur and when these surfaces are visibly dirty. But it also goes beyond the act of cleaning, because you want to make sure that your solution, and I call it double dipping, right? That you don't put a rag that you have cleaned one surface back into your cleaning solution. You always want to only have a clean rag in a clean solution if you've pre-made a solution for cleaning, right? Because that's what I call double dipping. Because if you wipe a surface and then re-dip it into the same solution to go to another spot, that's not good, because you now potentially have contaminated your solution. Again, I know you're saying, well, Sue, it's bleach. How can you contaminate bleach? It's the concept of not mixing dirty and clean. So you want to do just one surface at a time. Again, here's another thought. Do you find that a staff member uses one wipe, and let's say you've got tabletops that you have, several different tabletops that you've got for your clients to be eating on. Do you find that your staff is taking one rag let's say they're dipping the clean rag into a solution. I want table 1, then I go to table 2, then I go to table 3, then I go to table 4. No, you need to really think about each one of those as a potential area for some other different organism. Number 1, by the time you get to table 4, your solution should not be wet as wet it was for table 1. And so by the time you get to table 4, whatever was on table 3 pretty much has been shared with table 4, and the area has not been fully disinfected because it has not stayed wet for the right amount of time. Does that make sense? So it really is taking a look at not only what you're cleaning with, but how you're cleaning with, and that you're not recontaminating either the solution that you started with, or that you are using one rag to go from one surface to the other surface to the other surface. Because basically what you're doing is moving things around. And that is that link that's called transmission. All right. Next slide. Again, this is that same thing. When you're talking about dipping in, if you've got many facilities, one of the questions that I didn't ask was, do you have an outside company? And I'll talk about that. But if you are doing all your own cleaning, you want to make sure that when you're cleaning a surface and then you go to another thing, whether it's on the floor or again, like on a table, that you're using a clean mop to put into clean solution. Because if you have a dirty mop and then go back into your clean solution, you're not getting a clean, you're not doing what the chemical is supposed to do. All right. And after, if you've got something that you are recycling or cleaning and laundering your cloths, or what you're cleaning the floor with, you want to make sure that you store the dry cleaning things separate so that you don't have a mix of clean and dirty in the same spot. Next slide, please. I really like this slide. All right, I won't lie. I like this because it's easy to follow, and it's a great thing that you could download and post it like in a wipeable sleeve in an area where you store your cleaning items. Because you and your staff want to know that the product you're using is one that actually will be effective at killing viruses and bacteria. But you also want to make sure that it's compatible with the surfaces, because you don't want to either have it react with your surfaces or damage the surfaces or equipment or furniture that you're using, and you don't want it to leave an unsightly residue. I have worked in plenty of facilities where they were using the same kind of wipe for all different surfaces, and it reacted and actually caused left a residue that you can't get off. So you want to make sure that the cleaning product that your equipment you're using, it's safe to use on that. Now, what do you do when you don't know? Phone a friend. All right. Reach out to your DSS partner, your HQI partner, or leading age, because if we don't know the answer, we can look at it and find out for you. So help us help you if you don't know what your product is that's the correct thing to clean the correct item for. Okay. Next slide. Because what we're dealing with is the fact that viruses and bacteria can last on surfaces. All right. They don't move until we either kill them, or we either physically remove them with some elbow grease, or we kill them with the proper solution. Norovirus, you probably know this, but viruses like norovirus and the cold virus can live on surfaces for days, even a few weeks, right? This is why if we're not cleaning correctly, we can unknowingly spread infections from within our facilities, because we become the vehicle that moves them. Because if you touch a surface that hasn't properly been disinfected with either gloved hands or your regular hands, and then you don't disinfect yourself before you touch something else, it's going to move right along. So, these bacteria and viruses are very hardy. And so it's important that we use the proper tools that we have to be able to kill these things and not spread infection. Next slide, please. When we talk about use of products, I know that it does come down to cost, convenience, and compatibility. All right. Not every facility is going to have the resources to be able to afford using pre-made wipes. Totally get that. So you need to be able to use the right products that help you keep your self solvent as well. I totally get that. You want to make sure it's correct. Some of these products that are in pre-made things are solutions that are called quaternary ammonium products, right? These are the ones, some people may be more familiar with what we call the purple top or the red top super sandy wipes. All right. Those are made by a company called PDI. Cavi Wipes is also another brand. Those are it's hard to say, quaternary ammonium products that are very effective against bacteria and viruses. They're stronger solutions. You need to make sure that your staff is wearing gloves always when they're using these products. All right. They can damage some equipment and furniture. So you need to make sure you understand what the compatibility is. I always have, I kind of like to have some sort of generic little buzzwords that I like to say. And I have always said, if it's wet and it's not yours, you better be wearing gloves. So these solutions are wet. You want the area that they're cleaning to stay wet. So you want to make sure your staff is properly wearing gloves to perform that task. Makes that very clear and simple. Next slide, please.
Hey, Sue, we have about 4 minutes left in the meeting.
And I'm just about done. That's perfect. Oh, so should I talk real fast? Yes, I can talk real fast. Because so sorry about that. I thought I'd time myself out well. Basically, this slide talks about you want to make sure that you know all the products that you need to have clean. So step back or have a staff member step back, take a look at what your clients and your staff are touching. And you want to make sure those are the things that you are cleaning. Sorry about that. Thank you for that heads up. Next slide. This talks about some expectations. All right. If you don't currently assign your tasks, take a look at the back of this policy. And what you want to do is you can save that in your Word document. You can delete everything but the cleaning schedule, because it's got daily, twice a day, weekly, and as needed. You can adjust that. And if you need help with adjusting that table, let me know, because it sets a clear expectation for your staff. Next slide. Because knowledge really is power. I really like this policy. I like the way it was created. I like that it provides good examples of how you should properly clean and what the staff needs to do to be safe and to make sure that the residents are safe. Next slide. So I think it's terrific that you picked this slide to ask me to talk about. I apologize that I was a little verbal, but that's kind of me, because I love doing this and I love helping you. If you have any questions, please let me know, because next slide, at the end of the day, you want to be that facility that routinely cleans, because when people enter your environment, they're going to use those three sight things about knowing when things clean. They're going to use their nose to know if it's cleaned. And if you've got another area that is doing your cleaning for you, I put a little challenge out there for you to, I don't know, stay late or find out what products they're using. Make sure that they are effective in your facility. And I'll bet you if they find out you're interested in what they're cleaning with, they're going to take a little extra pride, because they know it's important to you to know that your environment is clean. I put a little extra time here for Q&A, which I don't think that we have, but if you put any questions in the chat, I will make sure that I get back with you. And for the last slide, this is my contact information. I thank you so much for letting me speak today, and I apologize if I've run you up to the end.
That is okay.
I'll turn it back to you, Emily.
We are so happy to have you with us, and you gave a wonderful presentation. We don't have time for Q&A today, but we did share Sue's contact information in the chat if you have any additional questions for her, or you can reach out to me and I can put you into contact with her. I'm going to skip through. I'm going to just send everybody a quick email after this with all of our reminders. And then I do have a couple polling questions real quick for everyone, if you could please answer before we hop off. So the first one is, if you have implemented any of the IPC template policies at your center. If you have, if you haven't, if you are planning to, or maybe you're not planning to implement them, but we just want to get a good idea so that we know where to go next. And then once we have those, I can move on to the next questions. Perfect. We have all responses. And then the next question is, so with some context to this question, we are planning to host an education event either in April or May for infection prevention specific to the adult day settings. We're starting to plan that now, and we wanted feedback to see the ability to attend. So we know that getting away from centers can be challenging. So we were thinking either a virtual option or maybe an in-person regional option. So our next poll is getting launched right now just to gather some feedback for that. All right, everybody responded. Thank you so much. And our next session will be March 13th. Betsy will drop the registration link in the chat. Please note that this registration link actually will be good for the rest of the series up until July. So if you register for this next one, then you'll be registered for the next few months. And let's go real quick. And then you have my contact information. You always get my emails, so you have mine, but if you need me, you know how to contact me. And that is all we have for today. Thank you so much again for attending the office hours session. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you next month.